great. How about a warm round of welcome for this?
Thanks, folks. It's great to be here, and I've got to make sure I don't stand in front of my own slides, so I'll go this way, I think. That's going to work. In starting, I'd like to say Kei Kora, Wanju Wanju Nija Nunga Buja. And have I just dropped out?
Yes.
Yes. There's lots of languages we know. We know French. We can say bonjour in French. We can say kia ora in Kiwi. But Kei Kora means welcome friend in Noongar. So it's actually pretty close to kia ora, Kei Kora. So I think it's a bit of a challenge for us to start thinking about locally about our heritage, our whole heritage in the place that we live. And when we think about the future, I think it's really important to position ourselves from the past really solidly. What I want to do today is talk to you a lot about where I think the future is going. And I'll talk a lot about energy, but I'm actually at the end going to add a little bit about the other regional things that are happening in technology, because I think it's really relevant to Mundaring, it's really relevant to a lot of regional places who are really looking to transition, and obviously that's what today is about. So I want to talk about distributed tech. Solar is distributed tech. You may have heard that phrase used about distributed energy, but there's some other tech that I'll come to at the end. Now I'll turn the button the right way around. What's happening in technology, what's happening in clean tech, how can you be a better surfer, how can you understand what's arriving in the marketplace? And some of you that would have seen me speak last year, you'll recognise some of the slides in the start, but some of the messages are updated, and certainly some of the data is updated, and where I'll take you is talking to you about where some of the energy is arriving at now. And I guess one of the scenarios is what we're facing is mind-bogglingly rapid change, and it's really difficult to get ready for that. But the only thing you can do is brace yourself and get on with it. Prediction is very difficult. This is my favourite phrase. Prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. That is meant to be a joke, but it is absolutely true. What I say here today, always take with a pinch of salt, but what we can do from the past is actually understand the way that markets change, understand the way that technology arrives, and as a consequence of that, start to understand what we should expect with the future. So this is the Economic 101 slide, this is the old slide, this is called Rogers S-curve, and I'll find the right button here, and what it says is the market starts down here early on, and if you bought your first Mac Plus in 1985 like I did, then you would have spent $3,300 on that with its external floppy drive. It was bloody brilliant, but I was one of a few people to be in that patch. But then as more and more people buy computers, the market reaches its 100% saturation. And when we talk about this S-curve, 100% saturation means that everybody that wants one has got one. Doesn't necessarily mean that everybody in the planet has got one, but it means that those that are going to buy one have already bought one. So that means that that market is full. There's an old story about a shoe salesman who goes to Africa and notices that 99% of people don't have shoes on, goes back to the factory and says to the boss, this is a really lousy market. There's only 1% of people wearing shoes. And then the boss says, well, that can't be right. So he sends somebody else off, and that salesman comes back and says, boss, this is a great market. 99% of people don't wear shoes. So it's really a matter of making the most of the opportunity and actually bringing that forward. And again, for you folks in Mundaring and for everybody in the regions, I think there's a lot of opportunity to actually adopt that change and be a part of that change. The other thing we know about technology, it enters in a predictable way and also exits in a predictable way. When we're finished with the technology, it doesn't linger on. There's not this gradual linear transition into the future of these devices running out of steam. And there's a whole shopping list of these products, and I had this list up here last year, of a whole range of things. Perhaps a really obvious one is the typewriter. When we did away with the typewriter, it didn't hang around for long. Although we did go from a manual typewriter to an electric typewriter, and manual typewriters didn't hang around for long as well, although they probably hung on for longer than otherwise might have anticipated. But we went from typewriters to word processors to PCs. And some people forget that there was a word processor in between. We didn't just go straight to a laptop or straight to a desktop. There were those things called Kremenkos, and you still actually had an office secretary in the front, and they were punching in the numbers, and it worked that way. But as you go through all the sorts of different technology shifts we see transitions, and we know that they actually happen quite quickly. Perhaps the most famous one is the argument about VHS and video. At the time that video came out in the 80s and the late 70s, there was two technologies. There was beta and there was VHS. Beta was owned by Sony, and Beta didn't license their technology. They had the best technology, but they didn't license it. And the VHS market said, no, ours is open source. Anybody that wants to use it can, pay us a small license fee, off you go. So VHS became cheaper really quickly, and VHS succeeded. I'm often asked in renewables, Ray, you know, what's going to be the renewables that succeed? You know, there's all those renewables out there, which one's going to be the one that gets up? And the answer is, one of them. One of them's going to work. But, you know, so to be able to pick it is difficult, but to be able to say that the change will happen is easy. We can expect the change. And so that's what we can do in this space. And of course, the other thing not to worry about and get hung up about is ultimately the technology you chose will get replaced. VHS got replaced by DVD. DVD got replaced by Blu-ray. And now Blu-ray is being replaced by the cloud as we start to get into Netflix and start downloading these movies. So all technologies get replaced, and anybody that thinks that they're somehow special is wrong. None of us are special. Oh, we're all important, but none of us are special. And so, you know, it's about understanding how that works. And even when we go into the energy market down here, we have gone from, in energy, we've gone from gathering wood to chopping wood, to starting to gather coal, to mining coal, to actually moving on to wind, and then to moving on to solar. Because last year we built more solar capacity on the planet than we did new wind. So we're actually already even seeing a transition in renewables. So we shouldn't be surprised when technologies get replaced. As we move forward, again, this spaghetti diagram, some of you saw me talk last year or have heard about it, but this is the waves crashing on the beach diagram. Last century, in the early 1900s, technologies took 40, 50 or 60 years to penetrate a market. And then after the World War II, it started happening faster. It was only taking 20 or 30 years for new technologies to get right through the marketplace. And then we got to our century, and it's now waves stacked up on the beach and crashing, to the point where Accenture last year came up with a new idea of what they thought that Rogers S-curve looked like. So there's Rogers' old S-curve, and this is Accenture's Big Bang Theory. And the idea is that technology now arrives so quickly that we should just expect replacement. And it's a really important element of understanding, you know, when we make purchasing decisions, now if it's a TV set, yeah, most of us fully expect to have a new TV set in 3 or 4 years' time, because the technology is changing so quickly. Certainly, okay, come on, there's a few confessions needed. Who's still got one of those great big fat CRT TV sets? Anyone? There's a few. Get rid of them because they're chewing your energy. The reason you should get rid of them is not because the picture quality is awful, and it is, but because it consumes so much energy. The new TV sets are using less energy. Anyway, look, we'll glass of red over that one, we'll come back to that later. And one of the challenges for us is when technologies change, it does come really rapidly. And if we were to map it out in time, it would look something like that. It's kind of like a brick wall in front of us and we're about to walk into it if we don't adapt to it and get ready for the brick wall. The biggest problem for us all is that as we're standing just here and looking forward into the future, all we can see is that. So we don't know the change is coming. We need to be able to be prepared to be ready for it, but we don't know necessarily that it's coming. And so this also impacts on the way that governments make decisions and the way that local governments might actually consider their purchasing strategies and the way that federal government might decide whether they're going to phase out compact fluorescence or the old incandescent globes or not. So the challenge is that when the forecasts are making forecasts, what they do is in an Excel spreadsheet. Anybody who's used an Excel spreadsheet? At least half the room. Do you know what drag right does? It just, you know, drags the numbers across the page. Well, that's the way that these modern forecasts are done. The forecasters get their Excel spreadsheet out and put a series of old numbers in and they just drag it right to the new numbers. Doesn't tell you anything, because what we know is that the future always looks like this, doesn't look like that. But when the forecasters in government and other places are actually making these forward forecasts, very commonly all they do is drag out in a linear fashion into the future. The reason they do that is it's safe. They're not going to be wrong in the context that it will be always more than they predicted, and they can't get into trouble for that. But if it's less than they predicted, they might be in trouble. So what we know as systems grow, if we're manufacturing anything, whether it be a light globe, or a motor car, or a TV set, or a solar panel in a factory, every time you increase the production of that unit by 100%, you double production, you actually reduce manufacturing costs 22%. Because your ability to buy materials is increased, your ability to know how to build the product is increased. It's called a learning curve. And so every year, as you ramp up production, you'll get these price reductions. And in fact, in solar, pretty much since 1979, we've been ramping up production on average, doubling it every year. A few years back, we were doing it 600% a year, but we've been doubling it every year, to the point that the price of solar panels continues to fall every year by 22%. That's the manufactured price. It's not necessarily the installed price, so you've still got to put somebody on the end of that to put it up on your roof, but the actual unit cost keeps coming down. And that same rule applies to whatever widget you're manufacturing. What's been happening in renewables, of course, is we've been seeing this massive ramp up of spend. And last year I showed you this same slide that was a year younger. This is the new data, and of course what we've got is actually a continued spend on renewables around the world. In the whole world, when we spend on energy each year for exploring for gas wells and building the Browse Basin and expanding the fifth train at Woodside, or putting in a wind farm or putting in solar, the world spends about $1.5 trillion in total, $1,500 billion. But only about a third of that, just over a third, about $550 billion a year is actually spent on building power plants. So those power plants are coal-fired power plants, or gas-fired power plants, or solar power plants, or wind farms. So about $550 billion. Last year, of that $550 billion, around about $320 billion, almost two-thirds, was only spent on renewables. So we've actually gone through a remarkable transition. And so what that's done, in particular in relation to solar, is to produce this wonderful curve. Here's the price of coal-fired power and gas-fired power and oil-fired power through the history. And this is what's happened to the price of solar in the last 10 years. Why are we putting it on our rooftops? Because it's cheap. It's the cheapest way to get energy. But it's also now, in 2015, it's the cheapest way to build new power plants. Because what we discovered is that to build a 300 megawatt solar farm or a 300 megawatt coal-fired power plant, the solar is actually cheaper. And that's even without government incentives. So we're really on the cusp of that brick wall I was talking about that we're just about to walk into. It's happening right now. It really is an exciting time. But it's an exciting time that's actually really, really young. So if you look at the way that we've been taking up wind, that's the blue curve here, that curve really starts to uptick about here, about 2006, 2007. Wind is only about 8 or 9 years old as a mature technology. It's really recent. And it's really hard to imagine that we've actually only been doing renewables for less than a decade, in a big way. And actually, this solar boom, it's been going on forever, hasn't it? Feels like it. Actually, no. End of 2010, beginning of 2011, is when solar first really got started. Only 4 years old. It's phenomenal that in the space of 4 years, we've made this massive change. To the point where there are less than 100,000 homes in Australia with solar on their rooftops in the beginning of 2010. And now we've got 1.4 million homes in Australia with solar on. And by the time we hit 2020, it's probably going to be closer to 3.5 million homes. Almost half the homes in Australia by the end of this decade will have solar on them. It really is a remarkable transition and scaring the pants off everybody that's happening. Oh, now I talked before about forecasts, so this graph's a bit complicated. There's a whole pile of dots on here. So in 2012, this was my solar forecast forward 6 years to 2018. I discovered at the beginning of this year that my 2014 forecast from 2012 was 10% too low. I wouldn't have been sacked, it was great. So I guess, so in 2014 though, I knew that it was going to be too low, so I made this new forecast here, which was my 2014 forecast for where I thought solar was going. And then in the middle of this year, I thought, no, that's going to be wrong as well. So this was my 2015 forecast. Now let me take all those other lines away. So that's what solar looks like into the future, as far as I'm concerned, in the global market. It's a runaway train. Only problem is even that one's too low because China's just announced bigger targets. So even my most ambitious forecasts for the world are still proving to be too small. This is a really, really scary market. Here comes batteries. And the comment was made, batteries 2015, not quite here yet, I agree. Maybe towards the end of it next year, we should expect to see battery systems in a particularly strong way. That's where I see the global push happening. But right now, we're actually seeing a lot of effort by manufacturers to think about the market. And that'll change things around. There's lots of other ways to do renewables, and this is concentrated solar thermal coming in. This is the stuff that creates heat and stores heat. And they're the ones that you see with the focus mirrors that focus on the big tower. That will still come, and it will still be cheap, but it's not cheap yet. It'll be cheap in about 4 or 5 years' time, and then we'll start to see this particular curve pick up like these ones. So the world continues to change. But one of the problems is the forecasters never get it right. And when forecasters don't get it right, it doesn't inform policy. And when policy isn't well informed, the politicians make poor decisions. Some of you might say the politicians always make poor decisions. But if they're making decisions based on poor data, then they have a problem. So this grey bar down here is what the International Energy Agency, the world's leading authority on energy, thought would happen with the renewables. This is what everybody else thought would actually happen in here. This is the Global World Energy, Wind Council, thinking where they thought renewables would go. This was a few forward forecasts from the ACF, and they were told they were green nutters. And this is what actually happened. The ACF, sorry, not ACF, Greenpeace. Greenpeace had the world's best forecast on renewables, apart from mine, which is actually better. And this is the same for wind. They got it completely wrong with solar, and this is the same for solar. So this is what's actually, some of the forecasts are saying will actually happen. So we're seeing dramatic change. Yet even still, despite the dramatic changes we're seeing in the markets, the people that are setting policy in the world are still making the wrong decisions. The International Energy Agency, who I just lambasted on the previous slide, this is their September 2015 forecast for renewables for the next 5 years. It's a flat line. They've actually got their Excel spreadsheet and they drag right. It's crazy stuff. So, you know, but the problem we have is when we go to Paris in December to try and talk about carbon, and the International Energy Agency turn up as the global experts, which they're expected to be, what they're going to say is, yeah, this renewable stuff's still pretty tough. It doesn't work. They're wrong. Anyway, why are they wrong? It's really important for countries that are involved in energy to understand why they're wrong and what it actually means for us. So Australia is an energy-rich nation. Yeah, we've got lots of solar and wind, but we don't count that when we come to government. We only talk about the oil and the gas and the coal. This graph shows, from a long time ago, shows what countries are doing about renewable energy. If you're high up here, you're doing lots, and if you're down here, you're doing very little. And if you're a red dot, you export energy. That red dot just there is Australia. We're not very far up that chart. We're doing pretty well, but we're not far up that chart. There are other countries that are doing massively more than we are. But this is an old graph, but basically what it tells us is that energy exporting countries, like Australia, doing very little about renewables, we sell energy. But you only sell energy when you have a buyer at the other end to buy energy. Guess what? Everybody that buys energy is going renewable. So if we think we're going to sell coal to the world for the next 20 years, we're nuts. Anyway, I've updated that graph, used a bit of different data, but one of the really interesting things between the old data set and the new data set is that, in particular, the poorer countries of the world are absolutely going renewable. When we get told that coal is good for humanity, even with Malcolm saying these things, bugger, we know that the rest of the world, and in fact the world that is developing and has less cash, is saying, no, we'd rather have renewables. We don't want to buy your coal, we want to use our sunshine. Why would we keep buying your coal for 20 years when we can use our sunshine for 20 years? Seems obvious, doesn't it? Okay, so that translates into some really exciting stuff about solar in this case. So this is what all the world's top 10 solar nations are doing. Well, actually it's the top 9 plus India, because India is still not in the top 10 countries, and it won't be until next year. India is going to build so much energy. It's one of the things that I'm involved in at the moment in India, is India is going to build 100 gigawatts of energy so that by 2022 they'll be the 5th largest solar nation. And right now, they're not even in the top 10. That's how fast they're accelerating. And everybody else is doing it. The only problem with my graph is that I did this graph back in April, and since then China's increased their target. So this line for China is too low. It needs to be up here somewhere. The world is changing. It's changing really rapidly. And one of the other challenges we've got when we think about energy is if we're going to actually build a new power station, how long does it take? Well, if you want to build a, let's pick here, there's gas here. It takes me about, if I do it really well, and I employ the best engineers in the country and they don't go over budget and they go on time, then it takes about 4.5 years to build a 300 megawatt gas-fired power station. Now before I build the gas-fired power station, I need gas. So it takes 3 to 4 years for the gas reserves to be found, the hole to be drilled, and actually infrastructure to go in place so that when I open my gas-fired power station, you've actually got gas to go into it. So you don't just build a power station, you first of all have to have a contract, whether it's for coal or oil or gas or solar. Actually, no, you don't need a contract for solar, it's just in the sky. You don't need a contract for wind because it's just blowing past you. So when you actually look at 300 megawatt power stations, it takes you about 2 years to build a solar one if you're really good, or it might blow out to maybe 3 years. But the other advantage that renewables have is you can build it really quick. And actually, if you're going to build a 300 megawatt power station and you build it in your first month, you put up 10 megs, you can actually turn that part on. And you can add 20 megs and turn that part on as well. So not only can you build it faster, but you can actually start using it sooner, which from a capital investment point of view is a wonderful outcome. So when we start making future decisions about what sorts of power stations we'll build, this will be reflected in the way that we change the world. Now, how is it we could possibly just abandon coal and move to this renewable stuff? Surely coal's good for humanity, and it's absolutely fundamental to the way that we breathe. Sometimes the way we choke as well. Is that a bit harsh? It's a bit harsh. Let's just think about this. So this is US data, coal capacity. 80% of the US's coal capacity is more than 30 years old. So when the capitalist society of the USA decides to change and to close down an old coal-fired power station and build a new power station, will they decide to build the cheapest form of energy they can? Well, logically they would. And the cheapest form of energy is solar. So when they start closing all this old stock down, it'll just go. It won't hang around, into the distance, drag right on your Excel spreadsheet. It will disappear because technology always disappears. One of the challenges for us is, and it's kind of how I illustrate this brick wall that we're standing in front of. There's this steep curve right in front of us that we simply can't see. We can only imagine that it's there. Have we got serious about solar yet? Well, this is a blue curve. It tells us how many TV sets we manufacture every year. So in 2015, we'll manufacture probably around 400 million TV sets. So imagine a TV set that looks like this, just a flat panel, about that big. Now imagine a solar panel. What does it look like? Well, it's about this big, it's about the same shape. So if we imagine comparing panels of TVs to panels of solar, and then we actually work out how many solar panels we'll make in 2015, we'll only make 1/3 less than TV sets. Have we really got serious about producing solar from solar energy, from solar panels yet? No, we haven't. We haven't even scaled up the industry yet, so that we make more solar panels than we do TV sets. TV set's only one widget. Surely we can make more solar panels than one TV set. We will, and we will in the next 2 to 3 years. We'll pass that, and we'll continue up that surfing wave. Okay, here's an illustration of drag right. This is actually the US Energy Information Agency, another world authority on what they think energy will do. And this is their forecast for energy into the future. Excel spreadsheet, drag right. Excel spreadsheet, drag right. Where's the curvy line that I'm saying is happening for renewables? We're actually, not only are we expecting, but we're already measuring. It's not there. So they're wrong, I'm right. So I'll take this one right and put mine in. So this is what will happen with the world energy future, in my view. Here we've got oil continuing on. Yes, we've got the Tesla arriving, we've got all those electric cars, it's going to be lovely, but it'll still take us for a while, quite a while, probably 20 years or so, to get over oil. Coal in my mind's dead. It starts to exit in about 2022, 2023, when we make a decision to close all of those old coal-fired power stations and simply replace them with a cheaper form of energy, which is solar. Then we've got gas. Yeah, we're still doing browse, and so gas is still okay. So Australia can actually make a bit of use of its gas-fired power, and that's still going to go on like oil. So that's going to be up into the 2030s. Here's a curve. This curve that I've got in here for renewables, you might notice is not as steep as the other ones that I've got. I've been very conservative on this because I don't want to shock the International Energy Agency when I put my numbers out. So this is about an 8% growth rate, despite the fact that world energy and renewables are growing about 12%. So this is the conservative estimate of what the next 30 years might look like. My view is that it'll probably be steeper than that, but this actually works because what we actually get is a mix and changeover of energy systems, so that when we actually look at world energy consumption, we see this growth curve here of energy growing into the future. So with this growth in renewables, we still meet world energy demands. Fixing climate change doesn't mean warm beer. It still means you can run the fridge. Doesn't mean you have to live in a cave. You're not going to burn candles. You're still going to have wonderful LED lights, and you can go out and buy some from the guys in next door. So that's all going to happen. The other wonderful thing is it actually does start to impact, quite by accident, on global carbon emissions. So I'm actually quite optimistic that we can actually meet global carbon emission reduction targets, but that's a talk for another night with at least 3 bottles of red. Okay, so what's going to happen in solar in the next little while? So we've been talking about solar panels, the panels that we're using today. So what we do today is we build a house, we put a roof on it, we send a roof plumber up to put the roof on, and then we send a Sparky up, specialised Sparky is called a solar installer, and he goes up and puts solar panels on. And so that's this system here, and we've got solar hot water as well. So that's first generation solar, where it's actually fixed on. Second generation solar is arriving around about now, still a bit expensive, but what it is when it's in the building material. So when it's in the building material, your roof, when you put the roof on, part of the roof is solar. Roof plumber puts it on, not the Sparky. It just connects together, it's plug and play, and it just works. Right now, this is still not as cheap as the solar panel, so this is still the preferred option for most of us, but some people are starting to migrate into this system. What does it mean is you've reduced your material use of tiles, okay? You've got one labourer doing one job instead. There's a lot more to come because we'll start weaving it into fabric, we'll start actually incorporating it into materials, because when you make something, the material itself will simply have a photovoltaic component. It'll simply be part of the material. And if you choose to plug it in, you'll be able to plug it in. Really exciting stuff. Okay, getting close to the end. This is really just a graph. This is, obviously this is just a graph. This is a graph of solar in Western Australia. Down here is Western Australia itself. There's about 20% of homes in WA now have solar on. So, which means that there's about 180,000, 190,000 homes. The average size of those solar panels is the little red bar here in the southwest. We have about 2.6 kilowatt average on our rooftops. The blue one here is solar hot water. So what you can see, if we just lump the southwest, these are all the southwest towns, what you discover is that the penetration rate is really quite high, the size of the panels is quite low, and there's a reasonable penetration of solar hot water. Some places are quite extraordinary. That place there is Riverton. Let's find Mundaring under the very helpful black arrow. So Mundaring is actually doing above average. You've got about 25% of homes in Mundaring have solar. Still plenty of space to go yet. The size of the panels is about the same as everywhere else. And you've got actually quite a lot of solar hot water, so well done. So you're actually saving energy in 2 ways. Still a lot of growth to go, because 50% is really the theoretical maximum. About 50% of roofs really won't be suitable for solar. They'll have a tree over the top, they'll be pointing the wrong direction, whatever it is. So only about 50% of your rooftops will actually have solar in the end. But that's okay, because by the time we get to 50% of homes, the other 50% will start putting solar on their window, or maybe solar, painting solar on the wall, or whatever. This is the northwest. The northwest looks very different. First of all, there's a very low penetration of solar in the northwest. Don't know why. I've got some ideas, but that's the fourth bottle there. This is going to be quite a party. And then but they're also deploying solar hot water quite well. But what we do notice is that they actually, when they do install solar, their systems tend to be bigger. So they're using solar in a different way to the rest of to the southwest. Okay, very quickly, just wanted to trot through some of the changes that are coming as well as energy, because I think it really does help the transition program think about what it wants to do. Last century was command and control. We had a central bank, we had a central printing press for newspapers, we had a central power station down at Collie for making energy. And this century, as far as energy is concerned, is going to be distributed. We're going to have energy wherever we need it. It's going to be on rooftops, it's going to be on the top of light poles with tiny little solar panels generating light off LEDs. It'll be distributed. And my argument is that, in fact, all of the technologies that are arriving this century, things like Uber and Airbnb and Facebook, which distributes information for us, all of those things are distributed. And so what I'd argue is that this century is really going to be local, it's going to be distributed, and it's going to be much more democratic, because you'll make the decision about what it is that you want, rather than somebody telling you what's good for you. And that's pretty appealing to lots of us. And a lot of it's going to rely on this open source innovation. Now, I talked about open source before when I said VHS. VHS was an open source technology that anybody could use. Open source technology doesn't have patents, or sometimes it does, but the ability to use it is open. And so what it means is there's a lot more innovation in that space. So I've talked about it with renewable energy in most of the slides here. The other places it's happening, eBay is a distributed marketing technology where you can create a shop wherever you live, or you can buy from wherever you live. That's a distributed way of gaining a product. So we're seeing that in a whole range of things. We're seeing what's called market-led marketing, which is, in fact, I'll come back to that under the crowdfunding thing. Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is when that projector, and this watch, actually this watch does have an IP address, you can see Mickey Mouse waving at us, but when every device that we have actually has an internet address so that we can get out our phone, and if we want to switch the lights off at home, or turn the air conditioner up, or make sure that the kids are in bed by turning on the remote control camera. That sounds like if I park in Burswood, doesn't it? So when we do those things, we'll be able to be connected and actually understand how it works, and in a hopefully very simple way. But there's other things that are coming new, things like 3D printing. Right now 3D printers can print with over 2,000 different materials. Yes, plastic, but also it can print in metal. In the industrial scale, 3D printing is called additive manufacturing. The world's largest owner of 3D printing patents is HP, that's perhaps no surprise. The world's second largest holder of 3D patents in the world is Alcoa. And what they are doing is additive manufacturing. And Alcoa are getting, because it's actually quite easy to 3D print with aluminium, it's actually turning into new products. So if you've ever had a look at the BMW i3, BMW's electric car, it has a carbon fibre chassis, it has an alloy engine, that is an aluminium engine, an electric aluminium engine with copper wire, no steel yet. It's got an aluminium bonnet and roof and boot, and the side walls are all plastic. The car has no steel in it. Okay, the car industry for a long time has had steel in it. The new cars that we're producing in the future won't be. And they'll be 3D printed. So we'll see massive changes there. We'll see massive changes across this additive manufacturing, and that'll lead into construction as well. Automation and robotics is coming, and part of that robotics is the self-driving car that we've been talking about. I've got a slide on that in a second. Finance and banking and insurance and crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, things like Kickstarter. What you do with crowdfunding today is you get on, you think, I really want to create this new widget that's going to look something like this. I take a picture of it, I stick it up on Kickstarter, and said, who wants 10,000 of these? And you all volunteer and you all buy some. And when you've done that, I then go off and make it. I don't make it before you buy it, I make it after you bought it. Okay, but if I only sell 5 of them, I never build it. So we've suddenly got an efficiency in manufacturing that we only manufacture objects that we want. That's crowdfunding. That's also this idea of market-led marketing, where you check with the market first before you build something. And it creates energy efficiency savings and a whole range of other things. So this is why I say this century is going to be suggest and choose. Suggest and choose will drive what we call supply chain from the bottom up, where we'll make decisions about what we want, rather than manufacturers making decisions about what they think is good for us. That stuff's important. I'm out of time. We all know that stuff's important, so let's keep tweaking. Here's just a few changes that happen. So this is a 3D print. Anybody heard of the flow hive? 3D printing, the greatest revolution in beekeeping in 50 years as a consequence of a 3D printer. What they do is they print the frame, it gets broken up so the honey runs out the middle. When they pull the honeys out, they join it back together again. The bees come up and think, where did my honey go? And they start to refill the hive. So it's really good. No wax involved, it's really good. That's a 3D printed car, actually real. That's a real picture of a real 3D printed car that was manufactured in the US last year. These are 3D printed eyeballs. Okay, you can print with tissue. You can print with stem cells and create these and literally grow an eyeball. So this is from an Italian lab. This is a human eye. It does include the optic nerve fibre. It's not coming anytime soon, maybe about 10 years away. But they're already experimenting on this in the labs. And this is a 3D printed home. Wow. Where a 3D printer here is actually laying down concrete, and the only people on site are people supervising. There are no labourers. Okay? These are already being built in the US and in China. And the estimate in the US is that by 2020, 20% of homes will be built this way. This is a 3D printing robot building a bridge. It's building a bridge from here out into space. And it simply crosses a river. And you plug it in here and you come back 3 months later and your bridge is there. The world is an amazing place, and these technologies are coming really rapidly. And yeah, we might not quite get to this stage quite yet, but artificial intelligence increases according to Moore's law. And in 2000, we actually produced artificial intelligence at the intelligence of a cockroach. And in 2013, we produced artificial intelligence at the intelligence of a mouse. And by 2018, we expect to be producing artificial intelligence at the intelligence of a human. Because of Moore's law, everything doubles every 2 years. And it's all applying to this stuff because this is where we're actually deploying most rapidly artificial intelligence in these self-driving cars. And because of what VW did, all of this stuff will simply happen faster, not slower, because governments will regulate, will say, VW will not let VW ever do that ever again. Emission standards will go up and change will happen faster. That'll cover cities. They might even cover the Opera House. I'm hoping that one day the Opera House will look like that, except by the time it does, it will be PV paint. It won't be solar panels that go on, it'll be paint that goes on. Okay, adoption's just coming hand over fist. We've really got to get used to it because it's simply coming. But it is coming to help. It's not something we should necessarily be afraid of. It's happening across every sector. If you work in a business, expect it to be disrupted. 20th century business models won't work in this century because we'll do business in such a different way. Every industry will be completely transformed, that's my prediction, and no one, no place, no city, no location will be immune. So if you're not going to be immune, embrace it, get ready for it, don't worry about the war. One of the lessons from history is that we don't learn lessons from history. So we've got to get past that. So it's time we start, and the key lesson here is that change is inevitable. Thanks for listening. And that's another example of change is inevitable. The budgie leaving the budgie makers.